Okay, thank you for starting the recording. We're just going to, I know folks are kind of coming in, so we're going to give it another minute or two, and then we will start with some introductions and a panel discussion. We are currently recording. As we wait to do that, folks are welcome to introduce yourselves in the chat. I think that we all have access to the webinar chat, participants included. So it's nice to see folks here. Be curious. What everyone's what organization you are with or foundation, and whether you attended TAG or not. That would be questions you can answer in the chat. I will put those in the chat. Ah, maybe the participants don't have chat access. Got it. All right, well, that's okay. I do think participants can enter questions potentially in the questions section, and that might be the Q&A, a place to put sort of organization title and whether you went to tag or not. Okay. And I think we can probably get started. So this is being recorded. Thank you, Jessica, for recording. We have a really fantastic panel here today for everybody, and this is the TAG 2025 Key Takeaways panel with an all-star cast here. So what we want to do is start by doing some introductions of the panelists, and then we're going to talk about our experience this year at TAG 2025 in Atlanta, on what we learned and what we want to share with the community. And again, this is being recorded for folks to listen in on um, at another time. So I think there'll be some folks joining by recording. So let's go ahead and do some introductions, and we're going to do them in the order of this slide. So Ursula, I was wondering if you don't mind and introducing yourself first as a panelist at this Key Takeaways webinar.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Ursula Stewart, and I'm the nonprofit industry advisor at Salesforce, and my subject matter expertise is in grant making. I come from a 35 plus year background in grant making and joined Salesforce in 2020. So I'm coming up January 2020. So I'm coming up on my 6th year at Salesforce. And prior to being at Salesforce, I was a Salesforce customer for 10 years, one of the first organizations that started using the solution for grant making, and have been part of the tag community since its inception. That was almost 20 years now. 20 years will be next year. So I'm happy to join this panel
Thank
and
you,
turn it over
Ursula.
to the next.
Yeah, I think Jennifer was next. Thanks
That's
for Ursula.
me.
Thanks for sharing your background. Jennifer with the beautiful mountainous trees in the background. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Marisa, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel. I feel a little bit like the junior member of this team with these all-stars, Ursula and Matthew. So thank you. So I'm Jennifer Cattell. I'm Grants Officer for Systems and Processes at Sequoia Climate Foundation. And I've been here for just 2 years, but I've spent just under 10 years in the field of philanthropy, but I've already worked at 4 different foundations and on 5 different grant making platforms. So I like to think of myself as a technologist, although I've kind of evolved into it. And then just to speak a little bit to my organization where I am currently at Sequoia, we are coming up on our 5 years. We're relatively young and at a turning point in our evolution where we have a lot of big tech projects underway. And I just oversaw our migration from giving data to Salesforce. So that's what really put me solidly in the tech space. And I've been to grant making conferences and tech conferences, but this was my first time at a grant making tech conference. So I was a first timer and really excited to share my feedback.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, looking forward to hearing what you have to say from a first timer perspective. So it's great. Excellent. Matt, do you mind introducing yourself?
Of course, yes. Hi, all. My name is Matt Kostelik. I am the manager of systems and knowledge management at New Schools. New Schools is a nonprofit venture philanthropy. We work to build a better education system by connecting people, resources, and ideas. I'm coming up on my 2 years at New Schools in January, and this is also my first role in philanthropy and my first time attending TAG, which, similar to Jennifer, was a really cool experience to see or to get to meet my peers and really be at that locus and intersection of technology and philanthropy.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. Love having you here. I am going to introduce myself. So I'm Marisa Lopez. I'm a strategic account director at Agile Cloud Consulting. And we are a Salesforce implementation partner that focuses primarily on implementing Salesforce for nonprofits and foundations. And I work with a lot of amazing philanthropic institutes, such as New Schools and Sequoia Climate Foundation. Very happy to have you both here and be have the honor of enjoying some time with you both at TAG this year. I think I actually don't remember how many times I've been to TAG because I went many times and then I took a break and then I came back. So I think it's been about 4 or 5 times at TAG. I go to a lot of technology conferences, primarily Salesforce events. I've also been to Peak several times, which is a bit different. So this was a really great experience for me as well. And we really appreciate all of the panelists for being here and participating in this panel and talking about your experiences. So thank you so much. We have some questions, and I also welcome audience participation. So the audience is welcome to ask questions that we'll try to get back to you along the way. But I really wanted to actually start with Jennifer and Matt and ask you. You two can decide who wants to go first. As a first timer, it sounds like you both enjoyed the conference. I assume you would not be on this panel if you did not think it was a great experience. But I'd love to hear sort of what you liked most about the gathering. What did you enjoy most? What's going to make you want to come back again? So, Matt, I'm actually seeing you on the big screen, so maybe I'll ask you if you don't
Great.
mind responding first.
Great. Happy to. Yeah. I guess I'll build off what I was already sharing, which is, you know, in my first role in philanthropy, having the opportunity to connect with my peers. And as you mentioned, I think different than what I've heard some other um, experiences like Peak, which are really, really explicitly focused on like grant making, sort of like capital G, capital M grant making, and the range of folks at TAG, and in particular, folks who are in similar roles to mine that are not necessarily a part of day-to-day grant making, but maybe sit one layer removed on the technology front or process or systems sides of things, I think was really special, and it felt very cool to be able to like pick up and have a conversation with any single person who was there about something either really high level or really granular, right? Like as granular as like, what did you do in that Salesforce flow to what is your approach to AI, right? Policies. And the one other thing I would name too, I've had the pleasure of getting to be a part of TAG's Emerging Leadership Institute program this year. And so I got to meet a number of my cohort mates in person who I've been seeing and connecting with over the course of the year. And so we got to hang out a bit. I got to spend a little more time with my mentor. And so that was just a fun opportunity to be able to, as we actually close that cohort at the end of this calendar year to have a little bit of a stamp through that participation.
Nothing like seeing folks in person, right? So Matt, that's all interesting. I obviously want to hear what Jennifer has to say as well. However, I was wondering first, can you tell us more about what the emergent, I mean, I
Yeah.
understand the words, but in this case, what is the Emerging Leader Institute?
Yes, yes. The Emerging Leadership Initiative Institute, I actually didn't double check what the I stands for. I keep meaning to.
That's okay.
We just call it ELI. And so the ELI program, I believe it's been going on for a number of years now at TAG. And it's an application-based program that basically is designed to help foster leadership development throughout the TAG um, membership. A number of the folks in the cohort are like me and in their first role in philanthropy, or some folks who are looking to expand their impact or grow their leadership beyond their current role. And the structure is pretty straightforward in terms of you get paired with a mentor, which to me is maybe one of the, if not the most valuable parts. Shout out to my mentor, Marlena Wong at the Koret Foundation. Um, and then we also do monthly cohort meetings that are a mix of skill building, hearing from past ELI folks about their career journeys. Um, this year, they're also piloting a capstone project. So I've been working with the cohort of folks on actually relevant to probably many folks on this call, a tool for middle managers who are leading grant making system selection work. So more to come on that. But yeah, it's now's a good time if it's of interest to anyone on the call or listening to the recording, because I believe applications are open or or should be open. I believe I can also fact check that on the side once I stop talking. But uh, it is an annual program. So you apply in the fall, I believe, and then it runs for a calendar year. It might be, I'll double check the dates on that. But if not this year, if you're interested, there's always next year. Yeah. Yeah.
No problem. I just found the link, so I put it in the chat. But thank you for explaining what that is. It sounds like a really fantastic program, and I'm hearing that you got a lot of value out of it. Excellent. That's great. Love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. We don't expect you to know all the details about the application, but I wanted to get an overview of what it is. So thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. Interesting. Okay. So lots to think about there. Jennifer, I know you said that you're also a tag newbie, which it doesn't seem like you are because I see you so many places in the technology and grant making space, but first time for everything. Can you tell us sort of what stands out to you as some of your favorite parts of tag or what might make you want to come back some other time?
But I think it's a lot of what Matt said, but I'll echo what he said. I mean, I
Mhm.
think that for me, it was so amazing to be in a room full of 600 people with whom I felt like I could have a conversation, like a meaningful conversation about my work. Like there's people I could talk to, as Matt said, from like the minutia of like, how'd you build that flow to like, what are you doing with AI? Exactly same thing. But like every single person in that room, no matter what level of experience they have, if they've been in for a year or 5 years, or they're in IT or they're in grant making operations, every person I could have a meaningful conversation with. And it is different. I have attended several peak conferences. I've attended only one Salesforce conference, but they're all so different. They have a very different flavor. Like this is sort of the niche within the niche where you can find tech people at peak, but it is kind of like, I think the general feeling at peak is like, we have to deal with systems, except when you find that niche of people. But this is the room full of those people. You know what I mean? So like that excited me because I'm one of those people. So it felt like I'm with my people. Um, and as Matt said, I think even not being part of the cohort, there are people that we sort of just talk to all year round that are your people in your space, and you're online, you're slacking and you're asking questions and getting support, and suddenly you're just in the room together. And it felt a lot like, when you have a friend group and you're on chats, group chats all the time, and when you finally are together, you just pick up from the conversations you were having over chat. And it felt like that at TAG. It felt like, oh yeah, just picking up where we left off and like, hey, how are you? Not like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Jennifer. It felt like I was with my people. And similarly, for me, having all the vendors there, even the vendors that I didn't end up working with directly, yes, I enjoyed hanging out with my Agile people, but even vendors I didn't work with, I still had conversations with them, meaningful conversations during scoping or because I interact with them or see them at other conferences, having all of us in that space. and of course our Salesforce people and our Ursula, just being able to have those conversations real time is amazing.
Yeah. My experience was the same. So I thank you for saying all that. And I think it's a real testament to the conference planners for somehow just making it a real sort of safe and comfortable space where you just feel like everyone is your colleague. You're all very connected instead of, as someone who goes to a lot of big tech conferences, just kind of lost in a sea of folks, right? So it felt very comfortable and collegiate. And yeah, what a great community. TAG is such a good community. So thanks for sharing that. And as somebody who is on the partner side, it's nice to feel like we're important too. So thanks for the shout out. Shout out there, Jennifer. That's fantastic. Um, on a from a different perspective, Ursula, I know that you've been to many of these tag conferences, and I wanted to ask you, um, I would assume that feeling happens every year, but I'm not sure. But what was there anything about this year that stood out to you, either the topics that folks were discussing or the feeling in the room that might have been a little different or unique to this particular tag event?
Yeah, it's interesting listening to both Matt and Jennifer talk. And it's like it made me think of so many other things as well. It was like talking about communities and like talking about, so far we're mentioning about TAG and we're mentioning about Peak. And it's interesting because in those early days of Peak, it was more female than male attending, and TAG was more male than female attending. And now it seems like it's like a great balance of both events that has a great balance of just everyone in the room. And I think it's is a testament about community and how just that philanthropic space in general is becoming more of a community and collaborating together. And I believe Matt that and mentioned about peak being that GM word, grant making, and tag being that more technical, you know, dominance within the field of philanthropy. And it really shows that tag can be the dominance in philanthropy for technology, but they welcome those who have other roles within the grant making space to attend as well. So what I found more so this year than other years, what I'm not a hoarder, but I found a the booklet from 2016 TAG. And
Wow.
in that year, there was not a theme. There were just three areas that the conference focused on: data, management, and technical. That they were the three types of sessions. Compared to this year, we have that theme of transforming technology and
Mhm.
navigating change, building resilience, and leading with purpose. So it was more welcoming for anyone within that grant making or even that nonprofit space to be part of TAG this year. And I think that was what I found most impactful about TAG this year than any other year was that it was just welcoming of everyone to be part of that technology conversation. And it's not just conversation about technology as it pertains to grant makers, but technology throughout the entire ecosystem. So for me, that's what made this year's TAG conference, I will say personally, my most favorite that I've ever attended.
Ooh, I love that. We are all at the favorite one. That's great. So it's almost as if the focus and the topics are similar to different topics, but topics as in the past, but maybe the audience has shifted a little bit. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Actually, some of the conversation shifted as
Mm.
well,
Hmm.
which was really exciting. It was exuberant to just hear the direction that the conversations went. I think that's what was, what I enjoyed most is that it wasn't just one level. It was more of a holistic view. When I get excited, I use my hands. Okay, I'm going to sit in my hands.
You must be excited. Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Ursula, for digging even deeper because you have kind of more to compare to, right, of this particular event than the rest of us. That's really interesting. And I think I was hearing something similar from Matt and Jennifer too, in that you both said flows in AI. I don't know why those are the two sides of the spectrum, but um, that, like you said, Ursula, there's a lot of different levels and layers of conversation that could be had based on the folks who attended and what everybody's thinking about. And also, I wanted to add that I feel like the different sort of the keynotes and the sessions and what we were all hearing, in my experience, kind of moved that conversation in some different directions, and it was very interesting. Yeah. Good stuff. There's just nothing like all being in one place. I'm so glad that we're back in times where we can do that. It's nice. Yeah, it's excellent. Great. So Matt, you had a session. You presented. You were one of those folks that I think were kind of helping shape and shift the collective dialogue along the way. Um, I'd love to hear a little bragging and a little bit of highlights about your session. I believe it was entitled Empowering Staff Through Automation, a User-Centered Knowledge Strategy. Wow, what a
Correct.
title. Tell us
Yeah.
about it. What worked? What was exciting? What were folks thinking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to brag a little. I was very excited to be able to present at my first tag, and I appreciate, I think this is a testament to the ELI community too within tag because they really pushed us to apply and share what we're doing, as did my manager, Jess.
Great.
And it happened to be a solution that highlighted both our use of Salesforce and our work with Agile, as well as a third-party tool called Drive Connect through Epiphany. And specifically, I was sharing a bit about our approach here at New Schools to like maintaining and strengthening knowledge via structured folder hierarchy, automations that help do doc generation and doc storage, connecting our Google Drive to our Salesforce records to keep things in sync. Um, and I received a lot of positive feedback, I think, from folks about it. And I think some of that was driven by, I think there was a lot of presentations around around AI and data that ranged in granularity as we're talking about, like some that are very high level, more about like the ethics, some that were really showcasing like specific use cases or specific approaches. And my session was about a pretty specific approach, but it was grounded in like what's the philosophy that got us there? Like how did we make decisions along the way, and then how did the technology follow? And it was also a solution that didn't require you to know anything about AI, right? It was more traditional automation, right? And I think highlighting that there is still a place for that, and that there is still a role that's sort of like it's funny to call it traditional, right? Like this is still like pretty cutting edge tools, like tools that didn't exist a couple of years ago, right? To be able to keep some of this work in sync in the way that we needed to and wanted to. So I got a lot of feedback that it felt very tangible for folks, even for folks who are outside of these specific ecosystems, but just to have some of the principles. So yeah, I was really excited about it. Excited to share. And it was fun even in the prep work internally. I was working and one of my team members who uses these systems every day was like, I didn't realize how much is happening in the background. But now that you lay it out, oh yeah, a lot of this does do it for me, and I don't have to think about it. And so that was cool. And I will say, I do have some public facing material, so we're happy to share those with folks who attended or attending today, if you are curious to learn more. Obviously, it's not the same thing as getting the full voiceover, but at least give you a little bit of insight into how we approach some of that here at New Schools.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure it's gratifying to get some acknowledgement of all the hard work behind the automations that everybody gets to enjoy. There's a lot. I know Jennifer knows there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah, it's a lot of work. So, yeah, awesome. And congratulations. Good for you for speaking. I'm glad that your mentor encouraged you to do that, and that was encouraged through the program because I don't know about you, but I always feel like I get more out of speaking than I put into it with the conversations that surface afterwards and the connections and what you learn through those
For
experiences.
sure. It's definitely my a daily record for number of LinkedIn invitations for me after that session, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's excellent. It's great to hear that TAG is helping to get the emerging leaders out there and not new areas of thought and new perspectives. I think really keep these events very fresh and dynamic over the course of the years. So that's great. Um, I actually have another question for you, Matt. We talked about one of the big themes. So big themes that I heard were data, AI, they're tied together. I know when we were preparing for this panel, um, we talked a little bit about the keynote, and I'd really like to put this question out to both Ursula and Jennifer as well. So, there was a really fantastic keynote session about how data happens. And I didn't know if there's any highlights from that that you're recalling, or just about the data conversation in general that you'd like to share. And like I said, I'd like to also pose that question to Jennifer and Ursula as well.
I can start because I took
Okay.
copious notes.
This was Chris Wiggins for folks
Yes,
that are on the line.
Dr. Chris
Yes.
Wiggins, the book
Mhm.
How Data Happens. I took
Mhm.
copious notes during the session. Oh, you won't be able to see it because of my background, but and I pulled out a couple of things that really struck me. What I think I really appreciated overall about his keynote was he was talking about data in, I think, a more, I don't know whether it's like unique or just more sort of like just a different perspective than I think we might often hear, where he wasn't necessarily like what I'd say is like a data evangelist or AI evangelist. Like it was a very balanced, sort of thoughtful and ground and historic, I'd say, perspective, which is what his book is about.
Mhm.
So like some of the quotes that I've really been thinking about ever since then, um, he talked about like tech is not good or bad or neutral, which is a fun conundrum. And specifically, he talked about like, and any new collection or new or different access to data rearranges power. And that I've been sitting with a lot because I think it's easy to think of these things um, as always good that data can be neutral or is neutral. Um, uh, and so I think he talked about understanding like who can do what from what and who gets emerging capabilities. That really resonated too because at New Schools we think a lot about this in terms of when we invest in AI powered tools in education, we want to ensure that they are serving students furthest from opportunity, right? And I think
Mm.
that really aligns with how we think of some of those investment criteria and decisions we make. And speaking of AI, I was also thinking about this a lot because when I came into my organization almost 2 years ago, we didn't have any AI policy. And having to navigate that process, and he talked a lot about ethics, and I think ethics comes up a lot but it often is used, I think, as saying like something either is or isn't ethical, right?
Mm.
And the way he framed it that I hadn't really ever thought about um, was that ethics is about tension and about establishing shared vocabulary on principles. I think it's really easy to slip into these binaries of like AI is good or bad, data is good or bad, right? Versus it's almost always nuanced and almost always requires discussion and not just once, but on an ongoing basis. Um, and that was really powerful to think about. Yeah, it's like, anytime we're making a decision about collecting more data or what we do with data or storing data, but none of those or all of those have to do with ethics and have to do with power, right? Especially as a funder, right? Um, and I'd say the last thing that really stuck out to me, and I've really been trying to think about how to implement in the coming months, is, he talked a lot about um, how can you identify like the smallest experiment you can do now and like, as long as that experiment tells you whether you should do the next one or not, it's successful, right? I
Ooh.
think it's very easy to get caught up in the like flashy or the new or the like capital T transformation that takes a big effort or takes a lot of study or, like in education, oftentimes, we're so grounded in something like if there's no RCT, then it doesn't matter. And again, especially as an organization that's focused on innovation and fueling new ideas in education. I think we are always looking for what's that next experiment that can be done, and how can we help support folks with ideas. And I think bringing that internally within my role is something I want to think about. And that's even played out in the last month where we were talking about piloting some AI work, and we're like, well, we actually don't have time or capacity to do that. What's the simplest and smallest version of it that we can do? So again, I have pages of
Yeah,
quotes, but those were some of my
you
highlights.
just covered a lot of ground in a short
Yes.
period of
Yes, I might have answered one of your next questions too. So
it's total, that is absolutely fine. This is meant to be a sort of a candid conversation. So thanks. There's a couple points I'd like to come back to, but let me get back to data, and we can talk about both and AI in the same conversation. That's completely fine. It's all tied together, right? I think that was a really interesting. I was very intrigued myself with Chris Wiggins' presentation. I thought it was quite provocative and thought provoking, I should say. And that idea that the technology is good or bad is a very interesting point. I think it gets just straight into human psychology, right? Like we want to point to the technology when there's a problem. We want to blame it. And we got to keep in mind who's behind the scenes there. I also wanted to say, Matt, one thing that you reminded of me of that I had forgotten about that presentation is he was not afraid to look to everybody that was in that room and that was listening, and to make sure everyone was aware that whether they felt like it or not, I think there's a lot of power in the room and the roles that the folks are in, rather whether we're the main decision maker at our organization or not. We are part of a structure that holds a very significant amount of power, whether you're directly at a foundation or frankly in technology. This is my opinion. So I appreciated him just presenting that perspective that we should acknowledge our power, and what we can bring to the table and what we can help sort of control in terms of technology and sort of moving the world forward. So that was a very interesting perspective. I did put a link to his book in the chat. I know we all got the book. I have to admit that I have not yet read it, but I need to get back to it. Um, I do want to talk about AI, but before I jump to that, I don't know if Jennifer or Ursula, you had any thoughts about his presentation specifically in sort of data. Um, and then we could talk about AI and maybe some experimentation because I have a lot of thoughts about that. It's okay if you do or don't, but anything you want to follow up on that Matt had brought up? Not specifically. Okay.
I feel like you both covered it pretty well.
Okay.
I'm just going to throw in an extra quote that I really liked from his
Okay.
with me, which was, and I don't know if it's quite along the lines of what Matt was sharing about, like, or you know, consider the power and the ethics behind it. But he said, you don't actually have to kill the planet to predict the next word. And to me, that was a, like, just consider when and how you're using AI, you know, and just be really conscientious. That's all I'm going to add to about that keynote.
Oh, but there's so much
Yeah.
behind that.
And I think for me, I always come back to that cartoon that he talked about AI, the written and the reader cartoon. And it's basically the sender uses AI to turn one bullet point into a long email. And then the receiver uses AI to turn the long email into an easy to read bullet point, you know? So it's like just showing that basically AI means something different to everyone. And I think what his presentation, it spoke to the skeptic and it spoke to the cheerleader. And I think within, especially in that technology, that tag space that he was speaking to, he was speaking to those that once they go back to their organizations, they have to address AI not only to those cheerleaders, but also those who are skeptical about using AI. And so I think that his presentation gave good arguments that we could use and good bullet points that we can use within our organizations as to why AI is something that is going to be valuable throughout our organizations and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's very important. Let's talk more about AI. So, so I also heard and would agree with kind of building on what you said, Matt, and building on what you said, Ursula. AI is it's a different use case for everyone in every organization, and it's a tool like everything else. I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of feelings about AI. Everyone seems to have some thoughts and feelings about it. And from my perspective, working at a technology implementation firm, I feel like it's one of those tools that experimentation is the path. You have to start small and play around with it, and maybe even start using it for use cases that are not monumental or organization changing, to start assessing where you can leverage the tool and how. That's what I'm seeing to be with the clients that we are working with that are adopting Salesforce, Agentforce AI tools. I'm seeing a lot of experimentation, MVPs, starting small, building out from there. And for the folks that are the early adopters and are comfortable doing that, it seems to be working. Um, and that seems to be a theme. But AI did take center stage at TAG. Fortunately, there were some other sessions about other things, but it was obviously a key theme. It feels like it's just everywhere now. Um, I'm curious, especially for, well, for all of you really, but Matt and Jennifer, at your organizations, when it comes to AI, sort of what stands out to you most, either from conversations at TAG or that you've just been having more generally about how your organization and other philanthropic organizations can sort of embrace this technology? Or another question that's related, if you choose to answer this one instead, is what's a place that folks can start? Like what seems small enough or comfortable enough that it might be a starting place? Do you have any thoughts or feelings about that?
I I'm happy to share some thoughts. I
Yeah.
mean, I think our foundation is we're at sort of a nascent stage of AI adoption. So I think I could speak to like how we're approaching it, but also I think that there's some really what I really appreciated about TAG was the sessions that had really practical examples about AI usage in our exact in our workspace. So like the presentation about Impala and how that streamlines financial due diligence is something that if a foundation was new to AI usage, I could see that being a really easy thing to step in and sort of adopt. But there is a cost involved for that. So, well, there might be a cost involved with all of it. You probably should be using a paid version of an AI tool so that you can set up the right kind of protections and parameters and don't use the free ones. um, but the other one was the session. I'm sorry, I don't have the topic in my notes, but the session where they talked about the relieving the burden, lessening the burden on grantees by using AI in grantee reporting.
Mm,
And so using the Zoom chat and chat GPT to collect the transcript of these online like real-time conversations. So nobody's having to write a written report. And then but it doesn't shift the burden of writing it from the grantee to the program staff because you can use these tools to help collect the notes, but then review them. And I feel like that session was also still a reminder about how you got to keep a human in the process. You keep hearing this, like that, the importance of having a human in the process. Like let the tool take the burden away, but then still do your work. So you don't have to take all the notes. You don't have to take Matt's copious, multi pages of, I mean, unless you want to. That's some people, that's how we learn. We write things down. But use those tools that are easy to access and where you can set up the parameters for it. And that's one space that we have implemented internally. We're allowing Zoom chat capabilities with the AI. We haven't implemented it yet with grantees, but I thought that was a really great example and really enjoyed kind of hearing which foundations are doing that so that I could come back home and go, hey, these foundations are doing this. Can we consider applying that. And I think that's one of the great things about TAG is that you can come back and say, here's what I saw, and here's something we could try. Um, and yeah, but then just the overall thing was like, we don't have to sort of tackle AI as a thing unto itself. We can sort of take these little bits and pieces and go, how can I use it to really influence and impact and streamline my work or our work, our collective work?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing some concrete examples. It is wonderful that concrete examples were shared. And I think what I just heard you say is that you're using some of those tools internally, but not externally yet. Is that how you're sort of
Yeah, I think I would
starting
say
small and
that.
experimenting?
I would say that, and that I didn't mention that the other tool that we're using sort of nascently is Gemini. And so it's just been interesting to kind of have the freedom to start to explore that and to kind of understand where the limitations are. And I certainly, the quote from Chris Wiggins is resonating. I do not need to use it to write the next word. It's, better for like figuring out coding or things that you can use it in a system development. It's actually quite interesting.
Actually being sort of prudent in your use
Yeah.
of
Like I
AI.
used it today to say, hey, how do I build a filter on this report in Salesforce? And it reminded me how to do a cross row summary filter, whatever you call it, formula. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Great.
I
I
mean, I
love
should know how to do that anyway, but it was just a quick reference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's great for a reminder, and that's fantastic. So I like how hear how you're using it internally, and I feel like that'll eventually expand to external usage as well. And very good point. Keep a human involved. Still nothing like that. Um, Matt, thank you, Jennifer. Matt, do you have any examples that you wanted to specifically share about what you're thinking or how you are currently using it or
Yeah.
your organization or how you might?
Yeah, I mean, one, I'd say Jennifer covered a lot of ground, and thank you for that great recap. I would say the two things that stuck out to me, or one thing that stuck out to me, one thing I've been thinking about beyond just tag. One thing that stuck out to me from the sessions was how many that the majority of them, other than the one Jennifer mentioned that was around like reporting, a lot of them were focused on AI tools or functionality that were more about grantees or grantees implementation of them, which to me mirrors a lot of what we're seeing in the data from things like the TAG surveys and other surveys that philanthropy is behind on adoption. And I'm not in the one that means that you need to like rush or that we're behind. Behind might not even be the right word, that they're just
Are you
slower
are
in
you saying
adopting.
that your grantees are using it more than your
Yes.
organization? Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, the recent tag and project evidence surveys seem to indicate pretty strongly that grantees and nonprofits are using AI at a much higher rate than philanthropy and foundations. And I think we saw that reflected in some of the session content in terms of what was highlighted. Um, I think to Jennifer's point, there's like a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot of things in terms of what are the small steps that people are starting to take, I think, more and more, especially as tools get built into enterprise level tools like Gemini that make it more accessible. But I'd say like the thing I'd recommend that the and I can't remember who I stole this from, but I didn't come up with this. But I harp on it all the time is this phrase or idea. It's like don't use AI where effort is the point, right? And so I think that's like the number one thing you can do as an organization is sit down and really reckon with like, where is effort the point in what we do? For us as an organization, like, it's tempting, like one of our hardest processes, right, is like writing the memo that justifies an investment, right, a grant, right? But there's a reason, right? Like that's what we think are special sauces, right? Like our ability to identify strong unique new ideas, why would we outsource that, so to speak, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that's like a really good, even before you even know what tool you might use or like write the prompt, it's like just think about like, am I trying to use this tool, whether it's automation or generative AI or something else, to replace something where effort is actually the point. The effort is the reason that we do this. Because I think it's really easy to fall into that trap of, well, it would be easier if I didn't do it, but then what are we doing in the first place? So that's my sort of like number one thing I keep harping on. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It makes it hard, but You have a good point. Yeah, it's really well framed. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing that. Ursula, did you have anything you wanted to share? I know that I see the agent in your background and being in the Salesforce space, we're talking about Agent Force and AI and all kinds of things all the time. I don't know that we want to talk about how Salesforce is embracing AI, but what trends are you seeing in the philanthropic place? Like what use cases are you seeing that might be interesting to share with folks or
Well,
not? What do you think's missing? Yeah, I don't know how you want to jump in there.
yeah, it's interesting
Mm.
listening to both Jennifer and
Mhm.
Matt. And it's like talking about humans. And, of course, the one thing that we're always saying is that humans and agents are working together to drive success. And, that's the one thing that you always have to remember is that we're collaborating, we're collaborating together, we're in this together. And at Salesforce, what we like is the fact that we call ourselves customer zero, is that we're leading by example and that we always invite our customers to come see what we're doing and to be inspired by that in order to then, think of what they might do within their organizations. It's interesting. At Dreamforce, there was a session that one of our Grantmakers did. It was sold out, standing room only, on their journey so far with AI. And one of the things that they said is, don't be, it's okay if you fail, you know, but to just jump in there and start working with AI and
Mhm.
thinking about ways that you can use it. And the room was a mixture of grant makers, nonprofits, and for-profit organizations.
Oh.
And to Matt's point, it's interesting because it's the grant makers on the technical side that said that they were like holding back the reins as to how they were progressing with the use of AI. And one of the reasons is that they were fearful that staff would have so many use cases for AI that they wouldn't be able to, you know, keep up with the use cases. So I say for the technical people out there, don't be afraid to, like just dig in there and work through these use cases with your staff because you don't want to be left behind.
Yeah, it's a call to action, really, that you're making. I would agree. I would definitely agree from what I'm seeing. Well, thank you for saying that. I the conversation about data and AI, I just feel like I could go on for hours here. So I want to maybe kind of start wrapping this up. But Ursula, I did have one more question specifically for you, and then we'll do a final question. So thanks for folks who have held on the line. And I know, and the folks on the recording as well. Agree, call to action. Now's the time. Try it. Just try. It's time to get started. But Ursula, when we were preparing for this panel, we talked about the data and AI session for community impact. And I don't know if you've already kind of covered that, but I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to ask you sort of what resonated with you most from that session, because there were some real specific topics that we had discussed, and I think it's important to highlight.
And I think once again, it's about the use case of AI. Um, yes, there are nonprofits that are embracing AI, but they need funding. Yeah, point blank, they need funding, and the funding needs to come from the grant makers. And it's like when we think about what our overall mission is of grant makers, it's not just to support what we do internally, it's to be a partner within the ecosystem. And the best way that we can be partners in that ecosystem is to also support the journey of AI for nonprofits. Because one of the TAG reports, if you look at in 2024, showed one of the least amount of funding that nonprofits received was for technical assistance.
Mm,
And so we can do better as grant makers. And that's what I liked about this particular session is because it really talked more about the role of grant makers and how we can move forward the use of data strategies and digital transformations and AI for nonprofits.
Yeah, good point. Experimenting with new technology takes time and it takes money, right? It takes money to engage the experts and get the training and to invest your own time in it. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Thanks for thanks for getting down to brass tacks there. So okay, so we want to wrap up, although like I said, I'd love to just continue this conversation. There's so much to discuss. Um, the closing question for everyone is where do you want to see TAG go in the future? What are your hopes for either the event next year or just, I know there's a TAG Slack community, we all have interactions. Like what are you hoping for going forward based on how you were inspired during this event? And Ursula, I'm probably gonna make you go last, but I was thinking I'd call on either Jennifer or Matt first if you have any quick thoughts.
I can go. I have a quick one, which we talked a bit about, and Ursula, it's fun for you to share the 2016 that they have come a long way in terms of theme. And we all agreed that the strength of the conference is the mix of attendees. I do think there are opportunities to do even more sort of like branching, especially some of the keynotes felt relevant, but like they could have been even more relevant if my program people, my investment people were in the room. So I think either making that like an explicit track or making sure that folks on the stage also know exactly who's in the room or who might be the mix of folks in the room. I think would probably be my like biggest feedback to tag and thing I'd be excited to see. I mean, I expect them to pull out all the stops for the 20th or 25th, whatever number year anniversary it is for
Thanks for
next year.
flagging it the next year's of anniversary year.
Yes, I'm sure it'll be special. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and thanks for encouraging more inclusivity, right? So that was a great thought. Appreciate that, Matt. Um, thank you. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts for next year
Well, I
or
think
going forward?
it might be piggybacking on what Matt said. I mean, I think that my takeaway was I don't want this to be regressive, and Ursula probably knows better than I do because she's been to so many conferences. Having only been to one, I don't know if they've tried this before, but because you have such a mix of people in the room, I actually thought it'd be interesting to see tracks that were a little bit more specific to either learning paths or roles within the organization, just to help guide and choose. I mean, it's a small enough conference, I think that you can just pick whatever works for you, but I thought it would be interesting to see even just a suggested learning track. And then the keynotes can focus on the mix of people in the room as Matt was talking about. But yeah, I thought that could be interesting.
That's a great suggestion. Thanks. Um, Ursula, we're gonna ask you to close it up with parts and thoughts about where we go from here and what you'd like to see. And you've seen many things, and what do you think should be highlighted, or what are you hoping for with the big anniversary year next year?
I think Matt and Jennifer, they really summarized it well. I think I would just, add like Matt, your first time and also being a speaker makes me think, love the new voices and love the new connections. And, even being not just someone who attended, but also on the vendor side. What I love is the fact that even on the vendor side, we're supposed to be competitors. I guess we are, but we learn and we share with each other as well. So
Mhm.
that learning circle, it is a full circle when you go to tag. And I would just like to see that continue and expand because, no matter where we are within the spectrum, we all learn together. And so the more that we can learn together and bring in more of the nonprofit into that conversation as well, instead of talking about them, bring them in the room with us so that we can hear specifically from the nonprofits, that would be great as well.
Love that. Thank you. Couldn't agree more. I'm honored to have been part of the conversation at TAG and be able to participate and learn alongside with everybody else. So I want to thank you all, Jennifer, Matt, Ursula, for taking time to participate in this conversation and taking the time to prepare. Really appreciate each of you and your dedication to this community and to share thoughts. And we're a little over time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. But this is recorded. I will share some of the links in a follow-up email. I do not think they were shared over to the panelists in the chat, and we appreciate everyone for participating. So thanks and have a great afternoon. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
Marissa.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.